Sometimes the only way to complete a story is to end where you started. I'm John Berry, and today we're talking about the 7th episode of the 7th and final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. That episode being Dangerous Debt. So this is the 3rd episode of the Ahsoka Walkabout arc. I'm expecting it to end next week, but I'm also expecting it to lead directly into the Siege of Mandalore. Maybe not timeline-wise, but certainly in regards to what I'm looking for is story-wise. And that's because of a character cameo in this episode. But before we get to that, let's talk about how the story ended where it began. Well, simply, at the end of the previous episode, Ahsoka, Trace, and Raffa are captured by the Pikes. During this episode, because Trace and Raffa, Raffa is interrogated. They try to interrogate Trace, but she escapes. Meanwhile, Ahsoka uses the Force to open their cell, and she and Raffa escapes. Raffa doesn't see Ahsoka using the Force, though. And then, because they eventually bump into them, and they got the fun exchange. I was going to rescue you. No, we were going to go rescue you. I just kind of love those exchanges where somebody goes to rescue somebody, but they've already managed to escape themselves. It's kind of like in The Force Awakens, though only one party was ever really in the need of escaping, not the other party. But so yeah, they're basically on the run for the Pikes, and we actually get to see an aspect of the Pike homeworld, Obadiah I think it is, that we hadn't seen before. And that's most of the general public. So probably the people that work for the Pikes, processing the spice is probably what a lot of them end up doing. But we do get to see an aspect of this world that we haven't seen before, general people. And of course they are eventually cornered and captured once again, and they end up right back where they started. But I think that's the only way for the story to proceed, because there's a few key developments between the characters themselves that I think will help the story in the next episode. So first of all, Ahsoka learns what happened to Trace and Raffa's parents. They were killed during a crash. And what happened was Zero the Hutt, so we get this in a drop of a character we're familiar with. Zero the Hutt breaks out with his gang, and and the Jedi are chasing them, and one of Zero's thugs, with all I know is with red eyes. I'm not quite sure. I don't recognize that as a character. But shoots an engine on a ship, and a Jedi tries to stop that ship from crashing. Of course, stops it from crashing into a populated platform and ends up crashing into Trace and Raffa's home. And while they were able to get away because their parents assisted them getting away, their parents did not get away and did not survive. And then afterwards, a Jedi comes to kind of try to comfort them, but kind of in a Jedi way failed at the same time. Like, that might help comfort a Jedi, but maybe not somebody who's not that familiar with the Force. Everything will work out, the Force will be with you always, that kind of stuff. And, that can be very encouraging if you understand the nature of the Force. But how were these people, how were Trace and Raffa supposed to understand the nature of the Force? So it came off kind of as almost being emotionally distant. And I think I have an idea who that Jedi could be. I think Luminara Unduli, based off the description. And I think Ahsoka's also thinking that. I couldn't quite tell by her body language and that kind of stuff and facial features. But I did get that impression. I can't say for sure, but I did get the impression that Ahsoka has an idea who this Jedi is. And I myself am thinking it's Luminara, which would kind of remind Ahsoka of Barriss. And that's almost what prompted her to... She's using the Force a lot more in this episode than she has done in the previous episode. Much... And the word I'm looking for here is in a way that's more likely for her to be discovered by Trace and Raffa that she has the Force and was a Jedi. So I do find that kind of interesting. So that's what really makes me think and made her think that might have been Luminara, and then made her think of Barriss, which almost made her a bit more reckless with her use of the Force if she didn't want to be discovered. it is hard to say, but that's kind of the impression I've gotten from all this. But also, I do want to say one thing about Luminara. She always seemed to be one of the more emotionally distant Jedi. Like, I just, every time we saw her on screen in the Clone Wars, I got that impression from her. And granted, Jedi are generally emotionally distant by nature, but more so compared to some of the other Jedi that we've seen. Like, even, like Yoda in Revenge of the Sith, like, yeah, maybe he isn't saying the right thing to help Anakin, but what he's saying is not necessarily a wrong or bad thing, especially for someone who's grown up knowing about the Force. Anakin just has a lot of problems that the Jedi aren't used to dealing with. So let's talk about that cameo I mentioned. The cameo is from Bo-Katan Kryze. I'm positive that is. If I'm wrong, let me know, but if I am wrong, I'd be shocked. And there's also 2 other Mandalorians with her, and I think they're there on some kind of mission to disrupt Pike operations, because let's remember, the Pikes had allied with Maul, and Bo-Katan is now fighting against the Mandalorians who are supporting Maul. Let's remember, there's a whole Mandalorian civil war going on here. Man, Mandalorians do seem to like their civil wars. And so they're on, as I said, they're on the Pike Ward, and yeah. So they're there, and they spot Ahsoka, and I was thinking that the Jedi that Bo-Katan had previously interacted with on another world. I can't say the name because I don't remember how to say it. I should have wrote it down. But the episode that they're referring to of this planet featured an episode, which is what they're referring to. Don't know what I'm trying to say there. So it featured Ahsoka, Lux Bonteri in the Death Watch, and all that stuff that was going on. And so, a previous episode we have seen, I remember watching it, I remember the episode innately, I just don't remember the name of the planet, go figure. But what we do get is that they were not expecting Ahsoka on the plane, so they're wondering if it will compromise their mission somehow. I don't think so, and I have the feeling that that Bo-Katan and her Mandalorians are going to be somehow related to Ahsoka, Trace, and Raffa getting free of the Pikes in their final actual escape. And I think that's somehow going to lead into the Siege of Mandalore arc. No. How? I'm not quite sure. Because first of all, we don't quite know what the timeline is going to be. But if you're always concerned about timeline, you can always adjust the time of how long Ahsoka, Trace, and Raffa were imprisoned by the Pikes. That gives you time flexibility there. Which actually is quite nice. But that's not really what I want to go for. Because, remember, Ahsoka goes back to the Republic for a little bit and gets Captain Rex and some clones to help her. So that's going to take a little bit of time too. So we gotta wait and see how this all plays out. But I'm convinced that at the end of next episode, Ahsoka will get an offer by Bo-Katan to help the Mandalorians somehow. That's how I think it's going to lead into it. And then the episode ends, and then the next episode we see that. That's my speculation, my prediction, if you will. Before I end my review, let's take a real quick look at the fortune cookie / nugget that starts every episode of the Clone Wars. Who you were does not have to define who you are. Which I think is, in Star Wars, very much a relevant thing. Think about Anakin and Ben Solo. It's like, who they were as Vader / Kylo does not define who they are. At least in my mind. I don't define Anakin by Vader. I define Anakin by Anakin. I define Ben by Kylo. I define Ben by Ben. It's very much the same idea, but that's more the very broad aspect of it, the redemption aspect. But in this episode, I'm not quite sure what they were actually trying to get at. Kind of like, my best guess is like, just because Ahsoka was a Jedi, that doesn't mean it has to define who she is now. Which is understandable. We do know in Rebels that she does say, I am no Jedi, but she's clearly a light side user of the Force. And very much in line with probably what the Jedi are supposed to stand for, especially in Rebels. Now, I do want to say that I thought this fell flat for some reason. I felt like it doesn't quite work out as well as I think it's supposed to. Like, I felt like I was missing something. I don't know. It could be just me, and you may think differently, and if you do, let me know. Maybe you'll point out something that will help me see how this fits in with the episode better, but not everyone can be a great hit and very well connected with the episode itself. And overall, I thought this was a good episode, and even though I did go full circle, I think that in itself is very important for the story. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comment section. Be sure to check me out on Facebook or Twitter. Links are in the description, along with the link for my Discord server if you would like to join, or my Patreon page if you would like to help support this channel. Also, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for future content. Also, feel free to check out the video or the playlist on screen now. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.